road.
Okay, hello.
Welcome back.
I'm back. Hi.
Hi.
I just wanted to jump in. I'm curious. I'm glad actually that you're talking about this because there was something I said on last night's video chat that I had with you that didn't quite sit well with me because I watched it back. And
Okay.
I was like, I said something when we were talking about the avoidant. That remember
Yeah.
that me jokingly said, "Oh yeah, you don't want anybody insecure in your life," and then you said everybody's insecure, which is true. We all have insecurities.
Yeah.
And that didn't really sit well with me when I said it that way because I was kind of like jokingly on it like that. I
Sure.
jumped
Sure.
on it like that, but it was because I used to be avoidant,
Okay.
and before I started my spiritual journey, that's how I was. But being avoidant is much deeper than that. And I didn't want to sound apathetic towards that,
Sure.
because when you're an avoidant, you really are just afraid of getting hurt. And it's a lot deeper than just being insecure. It's more of an inner pain that you have going on.
Well,
Mainly
do you
because,
mind if we unpack this for everybody and spend a few minutes unpacking it?
yeah,
Okay.
no problem.
Because, in the context of this video, when a man or woman rejects you, it might be this. What we're talking about is something I talked about earlier in this video is love attachment style. And in particular, there are basically two attachment styles. There's secure and insecure. And within insecure, there is anxious, and then there's avoidant. And within avoidant, there is known as fearful avoidant or dismissive avoidant. And fearful avoidants are actually kind of the combination of anxious and
Thank you.
avoidant at the same time. I mean, that's the Cliff Note version of this. So what I've interpreted, and I'm just going to quickly say this and I'll lean into what you just talked about, Giselle, is I happen to be aware that I have a anxious attachment style. What that means is I fear abandonment, I fear rejection, I fear loss. So in that, I tend to hold tight when I genuinely care for someone, which is an insecure way of approaching a relationship. Now, when avoidant enters into a relationship, they also feel fear abandonment, rejection, and all those things, but they keep everything at bay. They keep distance because they're afraid to get too close. So that's kind of the Cliff Note version of looking at this. The reason why I said everybody is insecure is I know there's research done with all these books I've talked about. I still don't believe. I believe that the population of human beings are at a default have an insecurity. I just haven't met the purely most evolved person on the planet. Everybody is fucked up. It's just a matter of degrees in my book. Okay, so coming back to you on the avoidant, why don't you share with us emotionally? You said you healed from that, and I know it was a spiritual approach to healing, but let's talk about the emotional effects of what you were feeling that caused you to be resistant. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. I'll go as open as I can. Okay.
Okay.
When I first started dating, I never dated, to be honest. Back when I was younger, I just used to go out. And if I saw a guy that I liked, I would flirt with him and then hook up with him. And then that's it. It would not
Wait.
go.
Now, when I'm sure, when we use the term hook up, do we mean penis and vagina hooking up?
Yes,
Okay. Just
yes,
so
that's
I'm
what
clear. Okay.
Yes, we engaged in sexual activity together, and then I will never sleep with a guy more than once because I didn't want to get attached because I was
Wow.
afraid of getting too close because I was anxious avoidant.
I guess there were a lot of happy men who had one night stands.
Well, yes,
Sorry, I'm
yeah,
being.
I guess maybe for them, not too much for me because
Okay.
at the end of the road, I ended up finding out that I felt so empty and that I
Yeah.
needed much more. And all
Sure.
that had a deep root issue. And that was because I always was neglected by my biological father.
Okay.
He abandoned me when I was, well, throughout the time, both me and my brother, but I'm going to speak for myself, we experienced a lot of emotional abuse, a lot of physical abuse. And
Okay.
after when I turned 4 years old, he abandoned us.
Okay.
So, still to this day, I don't know what it's like to feel loved by a man And
Hmm.
I never gave myself an opportunity to experience that because I didn't want to get too close because I didn't want to get hurt. So we
Yeah.
kind of make this fence and this wall of protection. And
Okay.
at the end of the day, it's not a healthy thing to do, but at the time I was 18, 19, and in my early 20s I started my journey. And when I was 20, when I turned, after I finished my relationship, after I turned 25, and that's
Okay.
when I just completely shifted. And but before that, I was just, that's what I was focused on. It's like, okay, we hit it, but I was straight up honest with them. I never played anybody. I was always
Okay.
honest with them. And I was like, hey, you know what? This is just a physical thing. I am not interested in a relationship. This is just a one-time thing. If I really like the guy, I'll do it like twice, but that's it.
Okay.
Because I was protecting my heart at the time. That's
Now, let
what
me ask you a question because this has me very curious. Were you consciously protecting your heart? I mean, was this a very conscious thing or was this like kind of a subconscious, like can you kind of look inward and see if there was any,
a
you
mixture
know,
of both. A mixture of both,
okay.
I think. I think that I consciously didn't want, I knew I didn't want to get attached. But
Okay.
at the same time, my inner child was basically like trying to screaming at me like, hey, you know this isn't right, don't do this. But yet I wanted to.
So let
And
me ask you a question and please
yeah,
forgive me.
no, it's fine.
And by the way, because even though this is a woman talking about avoidant, I just want you to know that I believe this can be easily a conversation with a man, and this same thing could be happening. Do you believe you were using these men? I'm just
No,
curious. Okay,
no.
not intentionally, but I'm just curious. Unintentionally, do you think you were using them?
No, you know why I don't think so? Because I was being honest.
Okay,
I
okay, so
did
you're in
feel bad.
integrity.
Yes, but I did feel bad for this one guy that I met when I was going back when I was going to school. To, let's say it was a technical school.
Okay,
I dated him. He was just out of the military. I didn't date him. I'm sorry. We went out on one date. We
okay,
met at a smoke break or whatever. We were at a break, and he's like, "Oh, I think you're very beautiful. Would you like to go out to a?" It was a lounge where they play live music. It was really nice.
okay,
I
okay,
so we went there, we had some beers, we were drinking and stuff. And then after that, we went to his motel because that's where he was staying at because he just got
okay,
out of the military.
okay,
So we did it, we were intimate with one another. And then after that, I didn't speak to him again. I even saw
okay,
him and I was like, "Hey, what's up? How are you good doing?" And then he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm fine." But he was like, he kind of fell for me, like because for some reason that happened a lot. After we were intimate, they would like look for me more, but I
okay,
didn't want to be part of it. So I felt
okay.
really bad because after I got my four tonsils, not tonsils, my wisdom teeth removed,
Yeah,
he
yeah.
was so sweet and so kind, and he brought me soup. But
Aw,
I didn't want to see anybody. So my mom, I was 18. My mom, she was like, "Oh, hey, this guy, he brought you soup. He wants to see you." I'm like, "Mom, I don't want to see anybody because I'm like all swollen and in
okay,
pain, and
okay,
I didn't want to see him. And at the same time, I didn't want him to get attached to me.
okay.
So
So
I
you had the wherewithal
older,
you had the wherewithal to keep distance, but these were all short-lived experiences. Let me ask you a deeper question. Have you ever found yourself in a relationship with someone where you kept distance from them? Has that happened in your life?
My last relationship was my first relationship. We actually lived together. We lived
Okay,
together for 4 months. But this is so weird the way we met.
okay,
Um, I met him. Ladies, I'm not recommending this. Don't do this. This is wrong. I was really messed up at the time. Just to say.
okay,
But I met him. I was starting to work somewhere, and I met him. He was working there as well. But one thing led to another. The owner was hitting on me, and I wouldn't allow it because he was
okay,
married, and I don't mess with that. And then he accused me because I wouldn't do anything with him. He accused me on the second day. He fired me because he was accusing me of stealing,
okay.
and I broke it. because I don't steal. Was raised with, with values, and I will
Okay.
never do that. And I was like, hey, you know what? There's cameras. You can check them. I have
Okay.
not stolen anything. So to make the long story short,
Okay.
the next day I go in, he's like, oh, hey, here's $60. You're fired. And I'm like,
Okay.
oh, okay, fine. Because I knew the reason. I knew it was
Okay.
because I would sleep with him. So this guy, I went to the ale house down the corner, and
Okay.
I was thinking, I had some wine. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna spend this. I was mad. I was mad because I was like, man, I really wanted this job, and now I don't have it. And I was like feeling sad. I'm not gonna lie. I got a little depressed because I was going through depression already at
Okay.
that time when I got that job. So that kind
Okay.
of like put more salt to the wound,
To the word. Okay.
And I started drinking, and I was just there. I was like, okay, let's make the best out of these $60 and just start drinking. So I started drinking, and then I'm texting the guy that I met there.
Okay.
And he,
Just for the
after
record, he turned into a relationship,
he
right?
turned into a relationship.
Okay. Okay.
Um,
Let's get into that.
so he comes in, and I talk to him. We go to his place. This is how it all
Okay.
started. We go to
Okay.
his place. I was not feeling attracted to him at all. Like, yeah, I thought he was cute and everything, but I didn't really feel much for him. But we went to his place that day, and then afterwards we had sex.
Okay.
And that was the second day I met him. I didn't
Okay.
meet him prior towards that. But
Now, I
we
just
didn't
want you
kiss.
to know something. Our
Mhm.
audience is looking at you. I mean, you're being very brave and honest because you've shared a lot of one night stands. You're
Yeah.
now sharing a story of a relationship that you had sex. I want you to understand that you could get radically judged for
Oh,
this.
that's
I mean,
okay. That's
okay.
okay. This is a living experience that I like to call testimony because it's who I used to be.
Yeah.
And thanks to who I used to be, I am who I am now. And this is
Yeah.
8 years ago. After I started my spiritual journey and I found Christ, I have not had sex in 8 years ever since I started my journey because I am waiting for someone special. And
Okay.
I promised myself that I wasn't gonna be with someone. I'm ready for someone special. I remember what you said. And I'm
Okay,
waiting.
so let's I want this conversation though to be about the emotional effects of being an avoidant. So now that we
Yeah,
brought up to speed, you met this guy at work, you lost your job, you got drunk, you hooked up with him on the second night, you had sex with him,
and
and
we
you
didn't
entered
kiss.
into a relationship with him, right?
Yes, we didn't kiss. We were on fire
Okay.
for 2 weeks. And we didn't kiss our first time. It took me a while because I didn't like to kiss him. For some reason, I thought that kiss was too intimate. I know it's very weird. And
Okay.
but this is what I was going through at the time as my avoidant self.
Okay.
Ancient avoiding, I feel. But
Okay.
anyway, so we were hot for 2 weeks, and then we're like, hey, you know what? You spend here every night, so let's move in together. You gotta go, you
Okay.
gotta go to your other place, so let's move in together. So we moved in together, and we lasted 4 months. At the end of the day, he just wanted to be with me because he wanted to get papers. Because he
You
was
mean he didn't live in the United States?
no, he didn't. I'm gonna protect his identity, but he
No,
was.
let's not go down that road. Okay, we got that. Let's keep going.
And when he knew that I didn't want to get married, he started changing.
Okay.
And he started getting toxic. He started provoking me and finding ways that I could try
I don't
like.
want to focus on his behavior. I really want to get into your avoidant because I want to get into the emotional effects of you being an avoidant. So let's
Okay,
keep all those details kind of,
okay.
to the side.
So when we were together in a relationship, I would give, but not too much. You know,
Okay.
like I would be like, oh yeah, I wasn't too lovey-dovey with him, but he was more with me than I was
Okay.
with.
So would you say you did this consciously? You kept the
Yes,
distance.
yes.
So by the way, I want to pause for everyone for a second. So we have to recognize that and whether you're a man or a woman, entering into a relationship with an avoidant, avoidance, fear, intimacy. So I'm going to ask you a question in a moment, Giselle, because this is a pattern I've noticed with avoidance is that they struggle mightily to open up emotionally to another person. In fact, they are very silent when it comes to how they feel about the other person. Even compliments can be very difficult for them because they want to keep this distance, because they're almost on an unconscious level waiting for the shoe to drop for that person to abandon them, which, as you said, is a reflection of what happened in your childhood with your father that abandoned you. So it must have been tough to keep distance emotionally, knowing that this could hurt another person. I mean, I'm going to ask you, were you even conscious and aware how that might affect another person?
Well, not really, because when we were together, we really didn't really see much of each other because he would work
Okay.
in the morning and come home at night, and we spend the morning meeting
Okay.
like from 9 till like 3 or 4 in the morning, and
Okay.
then we would be on weekends together. But
Yeah.
we didn't really get a chance to know each other much. And when we would talk, we would just talk about surface stuff. Like you
Yeah.
like to say, how's your
How's
day?
your day going? Did you have a good day? I hope you had a good day.
And it was everything very surface. And when he would try to go in deep, I would recoil and be like
Okay.
changing the subject, or just, trying to like avoid those deep conversations because I didn't want to
Okay.
open up. Because I would
Okay.
feel like if I open up, he's gonna judge me. You
Okay.
see? Like that's a very toxic pattern. And that I noticed that. I noticed that a lot. And then a lot of things happened and we ended up breaking up, right?
By the way,
I felt
there's a question just posted. Curious, are avoidants afraid if they're vulnerable that the other person will reject and abandon them? Do you mind responding to that?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Because you don't open up to yourself either.
Yeah.
An avoidant doesn't face their feelings. They don't
Yeah.
face themselves because they're so wounded that avoidants feel that if they open up, they're going to be judged because deep down inside in their subconscious, they're going to judge themselves because that's
Yeah.
something that you have to look at and you're afraid to look at it. But I will tell you, coming on the other side, once you look at it, you realize so much. And
Yeah.
that's when you start learning and you start growing and you start getting to know and facing those shadows and healing them and
Yeah.
realizing it's okay. And that's when self-love comes in. I don't depend on a man for love. I want love, but I already have it. I have the love of myself, but most
Yeah.
importantly, I have God's love, Christ's love, and that's the love that fills all. And that's why I feel full, and I don't need. And forgiveness also helps a lot here. I forgave my father. I actually left him an
Yeah.
audio forgiving him, and I felt free. So once you free yourself from everything and you start healing and working on your wounds, that starts fading away and you become more comfortable in your own skin, in your own emotions, and you start owning it. And then you start moving on in life and reflecting that in your environment, but it starts from
Yeah.
within first.
So I want to piggyback on what you just said. And no matter what a person's journey is, I always talk about personal development, self-help, spiritual work, or therapy. Those are the modalities I've talked about. In your particular case, your healing journey has been from a spiritual perspective, and particularly your relationship with God and Jesus Christ. And I don't want to make this a religious conversation because
I'm
in
not really.
my mind, there's more to it from a outside of a religious perspective. It's more of a spiritual perspective, a connection with your own divinity, a connection with your sovereignty. But also, this is what I want to lean into next, because when we talk about avoidance or anxious people, when you're in relationship with such a person, it's more challenging to be in relationship with this person. And I believe, now this is just a personal bias I have, it's a lot harder to be with an avoidant person than an anxious. At least the anxious is like that lapdog that's going, give me love, give me love, give me love, give me love, versus the dog that goes in the other room and hides under the corner of the bed kind of thing. And that's just a personal preference for myself, maybe because I'm an anxious. So why not, let's talk about the particular observation you made about yourself to go, like, what did it take for you to look inward and say, I've got a problem? Like what do you recall a moment, a thought, a belief, something that goes,
Yeah.
and outside of I need Jesus Christ, I mean, to work on yourself, did something happen?
After I broke up with my ex, that
Yeah.
guy that I'm telling you about, after I broke up with him, that's when I knew. I don't know if I should say this. He was gay.
Okay.
He was into men, but he wanted to be with me because of the papers. Like, I know that's weird, right? But
Well,
it's
so I mean, I don't know if that's relevant to your, like, how is that relevant to your growth? I mean, and I
because
don't want to get into someone else's particulars.
because that's when I realized, I was like, oh my gosh, have I gone this low? Like, did I feel this high level of loneliness that I
Okay.
had to get with someone who doesn't even feel that much for women, you know? And that's when I was like, you know what? I don't want to live this life anymore, because I started drinking again, because
Okay.
I used to drink a lot. And then after all this happened, that's when I had my breaking point. And I remember I was in my bathroom and I was like, you know what, God, I got down, because I've always believed in God, but I was more of the world than he was always on the back seat in my life.
Okay.
And that moment, that because it's just something that's very hard to explain. When you have an encounter, that's something that just washes over you. And I got on my knees and I started crying, and I started like getting super emotional, and I started
Okay.
looking. It was like a movie passing of everything that I have done up until that point with my life, everything that I have been through. And I was like, God, you know what? I don't want to continue to live like this. Please take me through the path of healing, of growth, and
Okay.
help me get off this dark hole that I'm in. And so on, I started my journey with him,
Yeah.
and how everything happened, because I started in different ways. I didn't really go straight to Christ. Like it's a journey that takes you there, because at the end of the day, that's where we're heading. But I know, like, this, I'm not
So
trying to bring
I'm going to jump in, and
any.
then I want to come back for a moment because I want to address the audience for a second. So I have a belief that in many cases, until we have a humbling event, a rock bottom event, will it be the catalyst for change in our lives? Oftentimes we have these opportunities for change. We get opportunities all the time to grow and change. But for some and for many, it takes an absolute rock bottom experience before it wakes you up. I know in my life, it was a rock bottom moment of losing my high-end corporate job, going through a divorce, and getting wiped out in the marketplace, where my identity was crushed before I actually said, I need help. And in my particular case, I went to my parents and said, I need help, even though I was a 40 or 45-year-old man. In your particular case, you chose a spiritual path for that. Okay, so here's my question to follow up on what I just shared. Okay. Um, you hit this rock bottom, correct?
Mhm.
But it wasn't like you went to Christ or went to church and all of a sudden it was healed. You've had to do work each and
I'm
every
still
day.
healing.
Pardon
I'm
me?
still healing. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I started going to church actually 2.5 years ago, when God told me, hey, you know what, you need to get baptized. I didn't understand why, but after I got baptized, I had my spiritual baptism. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
that was so powerful. But I was neglecting an information. I'm going to be open about it, because really finding out that he wasn't in it for the right reasons wasn't my rock bottom. My rock bottom was disappointment, because after we were having a lot of issues, it's very hard to talk about these personal things.
Mhm.
We were having our own issues. I went out drinking again, because like I said,
Okay.
back then I used to have a problem. And I met this guy. This guy, he was into some shady stuff. They drugged
Okay.
me. They put a drug on my drink. And
Okay.
the plan was to take me, because he was talking to me about, oh, we're going to go to Vegas with all these girls and stuff like that, and blah, blah, blah. And I was not interested. But something
Okay.
in me, I was drunk and drugged. I called my mom. I'm like, hey, mom, I'm not feeling well. I feel weird. And she shows up, because that's one thing I could always say. My mom is always there for me. I love her to pieces, because she's the best. And she shows up with my with a friend of hers, and then my ex shows up because she calls him. He
Okay.
sitting there in the parking lot looking while my mom comes up to the table and says, "Hey, what are you doing to my daughter? Why is my daughter this way?" And the guy, he literally bought my mom a drink with the same drug for her so he can drug my mom
Oh my
so that
God.
he could take me. But then I ended up grabbing that drink and I drank it.
Okay.
So my mom, she put me in the car, and this is the guy that I was with. He was sitting there in the parking lot. He even got mad at me, and he didn't even stand up. He didn't come in or anything. He was just looking on the sidelines, like, oh, I don't know her. And my mom,
By
she
the way,
kind of,
Giselle, I don't want to go too far down this path because I want to bring this back to the conversation about
no,
avoidance.
yeah,
Please
but
forgive
I
me.
was explaining to you, like, this is
Yeah.
where the rock bottom came in. Like,
Okay.
literally,
Okay.
like, it came from this disappointment
Okay.
because when you have a partner, you assume that partner is going to be there for you in
Okay.
everything, because that's how I am. If I have
Okay.
if my man is going through something and I see there's something going on, I'm sure that you will do the same thing. You're going to stand
Yeah.
up for your woman, or, in your case. So he didn't do that. So it was my mom who was doing all the standing up. And I'm
Okay.
glad she did. I made it home and I passed out, and that's that. But
Okay.
that's where everything was fractured within the
So
relationship.
would you say then in this particular of, we talk about humbling events, really your issue, well, not your, the core of where your issue comes is from your father. Okay. We get that piece, right? And forgiveness is radically, look at, we can't absolve somebody for their behavior, but we can certainly forgive,
Correct.
because I believe on some level people just do the best from what they know, and this just gets trickled down. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so you have this rock bottom event. Okay, now this is the real rock bottom,
The
and you
real.
chose to make a difference in your life. And again, you chose the church, you chose Jesus Christ. It's a spiritual path.
But that came
What?
after.
Pardon me.
That came after. First, all
Okay, that
this
came in.
came in. The
Okay,
whole.
so my question is, what in particular, how have you examined the avoidant part of you? Like that piece I want to key in on, because this conversation is about avoidant. How did you recognize you were an avoidant as you've been doing your healing work? And what have
Oh,
you done to shift that behavior to more of an open, secure attachment?
definitely, because I was even avoiding within myself.
Okay.
Because avoidance avoid themselves as well,
Got it.
and
Got
not
it.
wanting to look at it, not
Okay.
wanting to express, keeping that wall up. And I noticed that it was really hard for me to even look at myself in the mirror and express my emotions to myself.
Yeah.
And that's what happens to avoidance. But then once you start healing from all of that and you start looking at all of that and you go through your shadow period
Yeah.
and you start seeing the light within those shadows, then you start opening up to a new, I don't know how to say it, to a new, I like to say a new dimension of, okay, this is what you're facing, this is what you're going through. You have to work, not only psychologically, mentally, emotionally, but also spiritually. And that's how I started taking all these steps within it. I started learning a lot about the chakras and a lot of that's how everything started, like
Yeah.
I started with this part, but then it led me to Christ and it led me to God. And that's how I feel more full, because I always
Okay.
was seeking, oh, I need more, I need more, I need more, because I was thirsty for it. I was thirsty for growth and for healing. And it led me there. And I still to this day don't go to church every Sunday, but I commute with God every day, and
So,
that's what matters. And
well,
that's how I
to the
feel.
extent that it mirrors, and again, I just want, I'm not a religious person per se, but I have a connection with my divinity, if you
Mhm.
will. However, someone, I call it God, universe, spirit, or Gus. That's what I call it. But it's a connection with something greater than myself. And I do believe that when we choose to connect to something greater than ourselves, it allows us to examine what you talked about is the shadow. And for those listening, if you're not familiar with the work of Debbie Ford, I invite everyone, someone write this in the chat box, Debbie Ford, shadow work. This might be a great place to start. And as Giselle so beautifully shared with us right now, and vulnerable, I should say, and bravely shared, that our shadow work is that, for lack of a better word, the dark side of us, those parts of us that we protect and hide from the world. And it's our fears and our insecurities, and it's our pain. And through those fears, pains, and insecurities, we create walls around us. We create masks. And sometimes our only way to survive is to go through the experiences that you went through, which included drinking, which included, please forgive me for saying promiscuous sex, as a way to fill a void, a part that was hurting and missing inside of you. So, okay, somebody just posted it, Debbie Ford. I just want everyone to Google Debbie Ford and shadow work. If someone would write Debbie Ford and shadow work, I'll post that on the screen. Her sister, Ariel Ford, is a dear friend of mine. That's how I know. Here we go, Debbie Ford. Actually, Debbie Ford, she passed away a few years ago, and I went to her memorial service. So I'm familiar with the work that she does. And I'm encouraging everyone to look at those parts of themselves, because, again, folks, we could judge Giselle for her behavior, but we all have a story behind us of things that we would not want everyone to know. I think it's very brave of you to step into the love seat here, and I hope you feel that you've been loved through this process. And I'm grateful that, pardon me?
Sorry for interrupting you, but I do have to say this. I love sharing my story because it's something that I overcame, and I went through it, and allows me to create this empathy and understand people that are going through it,
Yeah.
And always remember, people, guys, I'm sharing this because I want to, I respect everybody's beliefs and everybody's, spirituality and everything. I'm nobody to judge, only God can do that, not me. I don't have that power. Nobody does. But always remember that when you point a finger, there's three pointing back at you.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
We all have a journey. We all go through life and face a lot of challenges. It's up to us what we do to overcome these challenges. And thanks to going to the other side and overcoming them, that allows you to create that empathy for the people that are going through tough times, and being able to help and to guide them, to that light, for them to forgive themselves and forgive others. And you don't forgive others for them. You forgive them for yourself, so that you can keep going and keep growing and seeing that light to the end of the tunnel. Because what matters most is self-love. And not only, and
Well,
that
wait, I'm sorry. What did you call it?
self-love.
What the heck
Yes.
is self-love anyway, Journey? So that's my book. I want everyone to know, if you didn't see it yesterday, Giselle was kind enough to come on, and she was acknowledging me because I was vulnerable with my community. In fact, I'm habitually vulnerable to my community, and I can be judged radically for this vulnerability. I can be perceived as weak. I could be perceived as needy. I mean, the list goes on and on. The reason why I shared, and why I'm grateful you shared, is because I believe through our, for lack of a better word, our testimony, our experiences, it's an opportunity for people to say, maybe I can stand up and do the work. So we're just here, two people encouraging the work. In particular, this conversation has been about avoidant behavior, and I'm grateful that you came on. We're going to bring this to a conclusion, Giselle. Thank you so much for sharing publicly this story, and most importantly, how you've done the work to heal. And so we're going to send a little prayer for you, okay? Because we want to attract an amazing man in your life. Am I right?
Absolutely. And I really want for you as well. So let's pray.
All right. God, universe, spirit, we invite in amazing, juicy, delicious, healthy, happy love into our lives, both Giselle and Jonathan, and everybody is watching right now. I'm inviting a relationship where you have amazing chemistry with one another, and it's off the charts, not in that addictive type of way, but that type of energetic connection where you feel like you've met the other part of yourself. We also invite in juicy, delicious, healthy, happy communication between the two of you, where the banter can go on for hours and hours at a time, and you can laugh and play together and hold hands through the difficult times and face those conflicts with loving our hands together. Also, God, universe, spirit, we invite in that compatibility where you can blend lives with one another and you share the same values, and you can build the deep roots of trust through social activities, hobbies, mutual interests, spending time with family and friends, traveling together, teamwork, building skills both in your personal and your professional life, so you eventually move in together and getting married. God, universe, spirit, I invite that in. Can I get an amen?
Amen. May everybody find their wholeness and become whole, so that you can attract a person that is also whole, and you can
All
live
right.
a juicy and delicious relationship, like you say.
Well, thank you so much. We're getting some great comments right now. Thank you so much, Giselle. I'm going to sign off for you right now. Thanks for being on. We're very grateful. Okay. Giving you a big, gigantic Jonathan Bear hug.
Right back at you.
All right. Thanks, sweetheart. Bye now. You know, we had an interesting conversation talking about avoidance and how it went down an interesting rabbit hole. You know, sadly, in Giselle's case, she experienced some trauma growing up that caused her to have a way of approaching life that needed alcohol and, sadly, sex as a way to fulfill what was missing inside of her. She had to reach a point of rock bottom through another unfortunate experience. She was able to recognize through this experience that she wanted to find something to make her whole. Now, whether it's personal development, self-help, spiritual work, religion, as she did, or even therapy, no matter what modality you do, I invite everyone to look inward. Look at your shadow. Look at those parts of you that you don't want to face, and face them head on. Because what that does, as Giselle said, it's a reflection of self-love. My book, What the Heck is Self-Love Anyway? And by the way, there's a link below to get a copy of my book. When we find the love in ourselves, the most important relationship you're ever going to have in your life is the relationship with self. I believe it was Esther Perel who said that. And when you've done the inner work, you'd be surprised how amazing things begin to enter in your life. Can you see the joy? Could you see the happiness within her? And I think she had to go through the deep pain, that suffering, to get to the other side. And some of us have to do it more than once. I know I've had to do it many of times, but I'm also here to invite you all that when you do the work, it doesn't matter whether or not you meet a guy or not, because you've met yourself in the mirror, and that's the most beautiful person on the planet. Can I get an amen? If this resonated with you, what I just shared, post a comment below. I'd like to hear your thoughts. As always, if you find value in my videos, please hit that like button. Please share this video. Please subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell so you can be notified of new videos. Also, do me a favor, hit the notification bell on your phone as well. Also, if you want to connect with me directly, look, I can't promise you I'm going to help you meet the guy, but what I can promise is make a difference in your life. There's links below to schedule a discovery call with me to see if working with a coach is right for you. There's a link to join my group called Midlife Love Mastery. There's a link to follow me on Instagram to get the books I recommend. You can even get my dating vows listed below. All right, I'm going to wrap up this video as I always do. First off, give myself a big, gigantic Jonathan Merrick of self-love. I'm going to reach into the camera and give you a hug of love if that's okay. I'm asking you to turn to someone, a pet, a teddy bear, a pillow, and give it or them a hug of love, because hugs are a great source of love. And let's face it, we could all use more love in our lives.